Hi you guys, welcome to Rosina Ranch Paint Nights with Lisa. Tonight's going to be a little bit different. What we're going to be doing is a painting of a picture I actually found recently in a magazine. I wanted to do a nice little beach time by the water, something with sandals, and I just stumbled across this and I thought this would be an interesting time just to do a live painting for the first time with you guys. This is going to be recorded so you guys can come back to it at any time you want. But let's go ahead and start with the materials. So tonight's regular paint class is going to be on an 11 by 14, and we're going to paint in the landscape, not portrait. We're going to paint with lengthwise across. Also for tonight, if you do have a cup laying around, a nice little red Solo cup will work great. But looking at our supply bag, we are using 3 different brushes today. So this is a large chisel easel brush. You can get one of those in your supplies. We also have our fine tip 0 brush, very fine tip, and then our small chisel brush. Alright, now let me go ahead and show you our setup so you can see what we're painting tonight. Alright, go ahead and if you can, grab some fresh water and a napkin, and we will get started right away. Also, to let you guys know, the colors that we're using tonight are primary yellow, primary red, primary blue, white, burnt umber or brown, tiny little bit of black, and then this one I did aquamarine with a small pump of primary blue for the water. So I'll go ahead and take all those lids off. Alright, and tonight we are painting with acrylics, as we always are. The acrylics do dry quickly, but we are going to move nice and a little bit fast in the beginning because with acrylics we want to get that blending going. So as you can see, to the right hand side, we have our picture that we're going to be using just as a display to know what we're doing and to guide us. So if you need to, reference that photo. But let's go ahead and get a pencil. And with our red Solo cup, I'm going to be making my beach ball. Now I might want my beach ball a little bit bigger than this. So I'm just going to kind of lay it down where I see fit. And I'm going to just lightly trace out that circle. Okay, I have my beach ball traced out. Although I do want that beach ball a little bit larger, so with that reference, I'm just going to go along this and go about 1/2 inch all the way around. So I've got a nice sized beach ball. About 1/2 inch. Okay, I'm going to take this and clean up my lines because even though we are putting paint over this, acrylic paint tends to be fairly transparent and those pencil lines are not very forgiving. So I will erase this pencil line. Just clean it up a little. Okay, now I got a little bit bigger of a beach ball. Clean that up. And I want to get that line across where my sandals are going to be resting into that pool. So let's go ahead, get the edge of a ruler or anything that you have handy. Let's see, I can use an older painting. Just going to line that up and go completely across, just below that beach ball. All right. So I got that line, and that's going to be our cement with our shoes. And what I want to do now is kind of start to work out those sandals. So let's just go ahead and start. We're going to have them going a little bit over the edge of the pool. So I'm going to start with my left sandal. And I'm just going to make a half circle. Just a half circle, because I want to know how much is sticking out into the water. And with my right sandal, I want to make another half circle. Same size. And now I just want to kind of think of the shape of a bean. So go slightly curved, almost straight down, and round that. And come back up and connect it. Slightly curved, down, come back up and connect it. And now here's where you can kind of tweak it, get that shape that you wanted, kind of go over where it needs to be redrawn, and clean that up. I'm going to go ahead and erase this line because, again, remember, pencils do tend to show through. It's not very forgiving because acrylic paint can be transparent, so make sure you get your pencil and you really erase those lines on the inside. Alright, now that I have a good base started for my picture, what I want to do is go ahead and get this water laid out first. And what I'm going to use for that is our large acrylic brush right here. And I'm going to dip that into our aquamarine primary blue. Let me give that a good mix. Okay, mix that up. I loaded up my brush pretty well with that. Now I'm just going to go ahead and cover my entire top portion of my canvas. Got that nice turquoise with a little blue in there. I just don't want something that's going to completely be the exact same color as one of the blue colors that are on the beach ball, because then it just kind of fades away and you kind of get lost. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to make that a little bit more turquoise with some blue in it, just to make it pop. Okay, and if you get a little bit of hair in there, make sure you're just brushing out that hair. And with this brush, you can kind of use the edge, lay it down close to your beach ball, and just kind of wiggle it around. And use that edge just to kind of outline your beach ball, nice and slow. If you go in a little bit, don't worry. We can always clean it up with our white later. Just go in and kind of use that edge to just trace all the way around your beach ball. Be careful not to get into your cement. Let's go ahead. All right. I'm going to fill that in. Load up more paint. Remember, this is the first time I'm painting this along with you. Usually I like to paint something prior, but sometimes I just like diving right in and painting it. Okay, I'm going to use this edge again to just trace where my concrete meets my water. Nice and slow. Long brush strokes to the sides of your canvas, because you will see brush strokes. You will see streaks in the water. So make sure you're having long, nice brush strokes. You don't want to see those brush strokes going up and down. You want to see them side to side. Now when we get here, we can grab our little chisel brush for much finer detail. So go ahead and grab that chisel brush. This is our little chisel brush. Sometimes I like to pull on it just to make sure I get all the bristles all together. And I'll dip that into our turquoise blue again. And now I'll clean up this area. So with this little brush I can get all the way around these little crevices. Just use that flat tip to trace around your sandals. Again, brush strokes side to side. Don't know if you guys can hear, but my cat is crying. She wants in so bad. But I can't because she will knock over the paint and jump up here. Sorry, kitty. Sorry, girl. Again, just trace around and brush stroke out. Nice long brush strokes. Okay, clean up this area. Use that edge, nice and slow, round it off. Carry off those brush strokes. And with your fine chisel brush, if you need to, this would be the time to go around your beach ball and to clean it up. But again, be careful of your streaks. Make sure you pull those streaks out to the side. Okay. Now let's go ahead and focus on the concrete below. For the concrete, I'm going to first wash off my large easel brush. Give it a good rinse. So scrub that brush at the bottom of your water cup because you really want to get all that water and that color out. And you want to dry your brush. And I got still too much color, so I'm going to go ahead and wring that out again. And dry your brush well. Okay. Now what I want to do for this concrete is I first want to load it up with white. So I'm going to take my easel brush and I'm going to load it with white. And I'm just going to start painting the entire concrete area in this white. And I do this so that when we go blending another color on top of it, it looks seamless. You can really do some nice blending when you lay down one color first, as opposed to just trying to come in with a tan color and make it work. Just be really careful close to that blue. If your brush sheds, just make sure you pick up those little bristles. Again, you still want your streaks to be side to side. As you get closer to your sandal, you can just wiggle your brush around, erase those lines that you just made. Okay, I'm going to load up my brush again with some more white. And I'm going to use that edge just to go close to that blue and drag it off to the side. Okay, get nice and close to that sandal. Make sure you're covering your entire canvas. You want to see that nice glossy wet look all around. If it's dry, that means there's no paint on there yet. Okay, we're going to go in here very carefully, outline that shoe. Okay, and drag those brush strokes out. If you can't, or if you don't feel comfortable using this brush and getting really into those details, let's go ahead and get out our small chisel brush and clean that up. But before we do that, I want to use the white that's left on here and give a nice little layer of white down here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lay it down and fill this in with white. When I get close to the edges, I'm going to put some more white on here. When I get close to those edges, all I want to do is plop it down in the middle, wiggle it out to the side, find where it's barely touching that blue, and just rotate my wrist around, getting a nice circle. And then I can do the same over here. Just lay it down, wiggle it out to the outside where it barely touches, and then just rotate that really large brush, and that's going to give you a really nice clean circle. It's going to look really clean. Swirl that around. It's nice and filled in, but I do see some areas where I see pencil marks still, so I'm going to go ahead and make sure my brush is really touching that blue. Okay. Now this is drying fairly quick. I know it's a nice hot summer day. So I'm going to go ahead and dip that in the water. Grab my cleaned off chisel brush. I'm going to add some more white and get into those little cracks next to the sandal. So with this little chisel brush, I'm going to get in here. And this is where I can clean it up. You do want to move pretty quick though, because you want this to be wet to blend in your brown. Make sure you erase all those up and down straight lines. Make sure you're covering your entire canvas. Don't leave it dry in an area. You want it to be wet. I'm going to go ahead, just clean that off a little bit. I'm going to get some of that burnt umber, which is that brown, and I'm just going to start working it in long strokes, back and forth. I really did one little drop of burnt umber, and I'm really going to work it in. Because again, you want those nice long streaks, and I don't want it to be too dark, so all I needed was one little scoop of brown to get me that nice concrete color, that tan concrete color. So I'm just going to be really careful again as we touch the water up here. Just be very careful to just get it to that edge and drag it out. And as we get to the sandal, I just want to touch down and brush out. Touch down, brush out. Get those nice long streaks going out. You don't want to see streaks going up and down. Nice side to side long streaks. And if you can't get really well, I just suggest tracing over that line, making it nice and smooth, and then going back and then just lightly brushing that streak out. Okay. Again, I still haven't loaded up my brush with new paint. I'm still working with the same amount of brown on there. I'm going in here, side strokes, back and forth, side to side. Just fill that in. Again, if you can't get that close, you can trace it. and then just brush those lines into each other. Get rid of those streaks. Alright, brush that in, blend it. Okay, we might have to use a little bit more burnt umber brown, but I still have some left on my brush, so I'm not going to dip it again. You might see that you're getting a little bit too light a color and wanting to dip some more, which is fine. Okay. Let's get those nice long streaks. Be careful when it touches the water. Ooh, I got a little bit of blue in there. I'm just going to clean up that brush, wipe over that, keep dragging it off to the side until it's nice and cleaned up. Okay? Alright. Now this concrete's got a little bit of speckles going on, so what I want to do is I want to get all that paint off. Go ahead and clean it off on your towel or paper towel. And I want you to take the tips of this brush, so I just got a little bit of my loose hairs in there. Take the tip of this brush and we're going to lightly dip it into our brown. Very lightly. I just got a tiny bit. And what I'm going to do, let's see if it's, no. I just want to flick some paint from the tip down onto my concrete. But be careful of your water and your beach ball up there. Now if that's not working, what I suggest is dipping a tiny bit of water into your brush and then picking up some color, and that water is going to make it super liquidy and more likely to leave little specks down. Again, just be careful. Try not to get it onto your ball if you can. If you do, you just can go over it again with your white. You don't have to worry too much about the sandals, because the sandals we're going to go over with color. Okay, just get a little bit of speckles down there. If you get some harsh lines, just grab your paper towel and you could blot it. And even if it has that texture, it's all good, because that texture is just going to make it look more realistic. Okay. Get some more brown down there. I'm going to dot that. Kind of like the paper towel too, because the paper towel is going to leave a little bit of a texture down. So I like this texture it's leaving. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and clean that chisel brush off. And as I can see, I did get some of my brown onto my white. So with a very clean chisel brush, go ahead and dip that back in the white. And clean up any spots where you might have gotten the brown. Another good reason for putting white underneath is to make colors pop. Acrylics, depending upon the brand that you use, can be opaque or transparent. So it's always nice, if you want to get a true color, that you always put a white down beforehand, because then it's going to become that much more bright, especially if you're using fluorescent colors. That's where you're going to see the biggest difference. Alright, so let's go ahead and clean off that chisel brush. And while we're waiting for our beach ball to dry, let's go ahead and fill in our shoes with some red paint. Not doing the straps quite yet. Right now we're just laying down paint so that it can dry in between layers. So we got that primary red. Just wiggle that, get close to the edge, and then start slowly coming out to nicely outline that shoe. And this is the time where you can kind of perfect your shape. As you get down to the bottom, just rotate, curve your wrist. As you can tell, this red's a little bit opaque for me, so I will be going over this probably with at least 2 coats. And curve. And you can really see the streaks. I think my brush had a little too much water on it, which can happen. So if you get too much water on your brush, you can actually water down that color quite a bit. And we're going to do that technique when it comes to the shadowing. But we're not doing shadowing quite yet. Right now we're just filling in that red. All right. Let's go ahead and right now, see I have that white still showing. This is a chance to just clean it up, push out that red, make sure there's no white empty spaces on my canvas. And again, every painting is going to have that ugly stage where you just don't really see it, but painting is all about layering. Sometimes you just don't see the picture at all until the very final stage. So I'd say we're pretty much at our ugly stage, where you can't really tell what we're doing. It's kind of just big old blobs of color, but it'll come together at the end. Okay, nice long streaks. Right now, take a look. For me, I think my shoes might be 2 different sizes, so I'm going to extend that down a little bit. Make sure I have the same shoe size. Sometimes you do need to take a step back and just look at your work. All right. Now this is going to need to dry before we go ahead and put on our second layer. So let's go ahead and move on to our ball. Or you know what? Since that red is drying and everything's kind of wet, I think our blue might be pretty dry. Yeah. Okay, let's go ahead and we're going to do those little tiles at the bottom of our pool. So with that, we're going to need to go ahead and pull out our 0 fine tip brush, this tiny little guy. And I'm going to use a piece of paper or wax paper, what I like to use. And I want to go ahead and I want to do the white tiles or the white grout inside the tiles, but I don't want it to be super bright white. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dip slightly into that turquoise, and then I'm going to dip into that white. And just to show you what color that is, it's a very, very muted turquoise. So I'm going to get that color, and I'm going to line up my paper and at an angle, I just want to do 1 line down. all the way to where the concrete meets. And I need to add a little bit of water to my paint just to make it more fluid. I'm going to drag that paper over. If you have a ruler, you could use this too. Just be careful of your wet paint surrounding. Just going to go ahead and paint another line, I'd say about 1.5 inches away from the first one. Okay. Again, probably add a little bit more water. Make sure it's nice and fluid. Wax paper is really great too to use, which is what I'm using now, because it doesn't absorb the paints like paper would. I'm going to do another about 1.5 inches. Go ahead and give myself a line down. It's getting a little dry. Okay. Got a little bit on my paper. Still hear my kitty begging to come in. I think she's going to sit there all night until I'm done. Oops, that's still wet. We can wipe that up. Another 1.5 inches over. Okay. Kind of freehand this. Carry that line up. Make sure it's watered down so it glides nice and easy. Okay. And it'll look much cleaner too if you have a ruler on hand. Okay. Now I got those lines. I want to get some lines across. Okay. Go ahead and lay it down right here. Do a nice line all the way across. Make sure it's watered down. It's nice and fluid. All the way across. Okay. Again, about 1.5 inches up. I think I might need a little bit more paint. Some more white, some more blue. Add some water in there. Go over my lines. Make my lines. Make sure you're seeing a solid line going across. Okay, and then I got my tiles going on. So what I want to do now is see if my white is dry on my beach ball, which it pretty much is. Is my red dry? Yes. Let's go ahead and add another layer of red so it's nice and strong. Grab your chisel brush, dry it off, load it up with some red paint, and go ahead and fill that in again. Definitely needed that second layer because that red was a little transparent. That second layer really helped it. It's erasing all those streak lines and filling it in. Much nicer. Okay. Go ahead and outline that again. Nice long brush strokes, because in case you do see your strokes, they're running in one direction. Okay. Now while we have red loaded up, let's go ahead and do our beach ball. So let's get a little bit more red paint on our chisel brush, just a tiny bit. And I'm going to find my center. And I just want to go ahead and plop it down right in the middle and push it down and just rotate until it does a circle for me. So again, just push it down and rotate with your wrist, and it will actually do a perfect circle for you. Put a little bit more paint on that. Find my middle, push down, just twist it all the way around. It's about the size, a little bit larger than a quarter. Alright. And so from there, I want to add my red stripe on my beach ball. So I'm going to come to my left and just go ahead and lay it down and streak back into my red circle. And from here I can choose how thick I want this streak. I'm going to do it, make a little triangle, trace that outline, and drag that color back in. And clean that up. Go ahead and do that circle again. Okay. Let's go ahead and clean that brush out. Make sure you dry it off. And let's go ahead and get some of that yellow, primary yellow. Straighten out your bristles if you need to. And we're just going to dip straight into that yellow. And from here, I'm just going to go off to the right and lay down some yellow and drag it out. Before I get to the edge of my ball, lift up, because then you can use that chisel edge to work in that color. So to the side, I'm just going to kind of push that color and wiggle it till I get to that edge, making sure it's nice and clean. Same thing here, you can push down, wiggle until you get really close up to that center point, just to put in some yellow. Okay, go ahead and rinse this off. Make sure you get all that yellow off because you do not want your blue to turn very green now, because we're going to go ahead and do our blue streak. Clean that off really well. You can tighten up your bristles. And we're going to go ahead and dip this into our primary blue. Not the turquoise, but the blue. Okay. Let's go ahead and again just lay down and go just till we get to the edge. Okay. Need more blue. Lay down your paint and go just till you get to the edge. And as you get to the edge, you can just wiggle, clean it up. You can even just go out to the edge and just brush stroke up. That seems to make a nice little clean line. And again, push it out until you're connecting back with that center. Okay, and now that we still have this blue, we can start playing along with some of the stuff that we're seeing in the water ripples and the reflection of the water. So what I want to do here is with my blue, I see there's a lot of ripples going on in the water next to the sandal, probably from the shadows. So I'm just going to take that paint and kind of give myself a little streak across the pool. Put a little bit of water in there. You don't have to load up your brush again. Just a little shadow. Maybe a little bit below. Streak out again. Just put some blue down here. We'll carry some of that blue over here. That dark shadow. Just going into the water. And with that in mind too, we're going to go ahead and give this beach ball some shadow. So again, I'm just going to dip my brush into water, and I want this to almost be transparent. That's why I'm not adding any more additional paint to it. But I want to start from down here, come up to the beach ball, and just trace it back over here. Kind of like the sun is shining down. It's probably on our right hand side. So we're casting some shadows into our water. You almost want this to be transparent, so just use water at this point. We're just brushing this blue over what's already been painted. As you can see, like that little line's still peeking through. Oops, got a little bit in there. We'll clean that up later. I just want to see a little bit of that bottom layer peeking through. Okay. A little bit more water. Okay. What I want to do now is very lightly just get a little bit of blue again. And I want to water it down so it's transparent. It's nice and watered down. And there's like a little ripple going on in the water around where the ball is. Probably because somebody dropped that ball in. So I'm just going to take that edge and make a few ripples in the water. Just make little U's, half U's. They don't have to be complete. You do like a little rainbow effect, just so it's showing that it's hitting the water It's making a little ripple in the water as we speak. Okay? Now from here, let's see. Let's go ahead and just take our cleaned off brush and lightly dip it into our black. Just the tip in black. I just got a tiny bit of black, and I'm going to water that down again to where it's transparent and it's almost going to be like a gray. And I want to darken up underneath the beach ball to cast a shadow in that water. I'm going to do that right now. Still transparent, you can still see the bottom showing through, but now we're adding some shadow. Nice long strokes because you are going to see them. Just stroke all the way up to that sandal. And you can even add a little bit of that gray into these streaks over here, adding some shadow. Don't worry if you get into your sandal, we can clean that up. Okay. Now with that black, get a little bit of that black going. Water it down because we're going to go ahead and just work on some of the shadowing of our sandal. So our sandal is going to give off a little bit of a shadow. We're just going to trace lightly around and bring it back down. Just a little bit of a shadow. And bring it back down that heel. Same thing over here. Give it a skinny little shadow. Bring it back down around to the ankle or the heel. Drag that back up. All right. Now what we can do is we can clean off this chisel brush. Clean it off really well. I'm going to dip this chisel brush into my white, pure white. And I'm going to put a little bit of water it down. And I'm going to try and do that ripple effect. So with that ripple effect, it's kind of random, but you will notice whenever you're doing very lightly, just make some lines going down. They all somehow like to attach themselves, so they all connect at some point. And very lightly, just going down. There's even, on the tops of those shadows, a tiny little ripple. So if you can add in some of those ripples. And this, your paint should be very fluid. So there should be a lot of water. So it's very, very transparent and see-through. Again, I'm just going to start adding some little ripples, even going through these little ripples. Just so it looks like the water is reflecting down through the pool. Okay, a little bit more water and white. Keep doing this. Just remember, you could just do random lines, but they all will eventually connect. Okay. This is where you could just kind of go a little crazy. Connecting all those little ripple lines. Even coming through that shadow. Just a little bit. Okay. I'm going to add a little bit more white and water that down. There's a big streak over here. This is just making it look more realistic. And there's some large patches of light coming through, so you could just take your brush, thicken up some areas where you think more light is hitting the water. Okay. Now I want to focus on those little ripples right here. Add a little more white. Water it down. And just trace over the tops of those little ripples that I had previously created. Tops of those little rainbows, imperfect rainbows. Okay. Blend in. As you can see, it's kind of coming along. A little bit of water ripple over here. And looking at the picture, the sandals don't really pop out that much to me, so I do want to do something a little different. Maybe we'll add some white sandal tops. Let's go ahead and do that. Make sure this is nice and dry. Grab some of our white. And I'm going to start just where that toe is. So it's slightly, let's say here's the toe, it's just slightly a little bit more right than the middle. I'm just going to put my paintbrush down, give myself a little line to start with, and the same over here. My big toe's right here, so I'm just going to go to the middle, slightly a little bit left, and plop that down. Give myself a little line, full starting point. And what I want to do with my chisel brush is I want to slide it over and curve, go outside, and come back in. So again, slide out, go outside, and curve it back in. And you could go ahead and thicken that up now. Okay, same thing over here. You want to go outside and curve it in, outside, curve it in. And then use your chisel brush to thicken up those straps. And that made it pop a lot better. Just curve those edges, round them up. Okay. All right. Maybe I might want to add a little bit of water to my white and just give a little highlight to these sandals. Maybe the light's just hitting them ever so slightly. So I'm just going to add a little highlight at the tops of these sandals. And along this edge right here. You really, really want to play with your highlights and your lowlights and your shadows, because that's what's going to make you stand out from the rest. And you're going to get better every single time you paint. Your technique's going to get better, your brush strokes are going to get better. Don't stress out too much. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and clean this brush off. My chisel brush. Dry it off. I'm going to dip my chisel brush in a little bit of black. Tiny bit of black. And I'm going to water that down so it's nice and transparent. And now I just want to trace over this line where the pool meets the concrete just to make it pop. Very, very lightly. Just trace over that line. This is where I can kind of clean up my mess right here. Wasn't super straight, but now I can try and make it straighter. It's nice and steady. Nice and steady strokes. Kind of thicken that up like there's a nice shadow casting into that pool. Thicken that up. Alright. I feel like I cleaned that up a little bit. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that little fine number 0 brush, and with that black I'm going to dip it in a little bit black and water that down as well. I'm going to add a little bit of details into my sandals. So what I want to do, let's see, I want to start in the middle and just follow all the way down. See, I had a little bit too much water on my brush, so I'm going to pick that back up. Since it's still wet, I can do that. Get a little bit of that black, lightly put it in some water, start in the middle, and I want to just go all the way straight down, kind of roll that back. Okay, grab a little bit more black paint. Water that down a little bit. Go over it again. Same thing on this side, all the way down, crossing over, and just roll your hand back to connect it. I'm going to actually trace that little strap with this black. So I'm going to take that black, I'm going to trace the entire strap. Just so you now see it, because it kind of disappears into that concrete. Make sure it's nice and fluid with water. I'm going to do the same thing here. Start in the middle, come down to the side, and then just roll it back around. From the middle, go down to the side and roll it back, like a circle almost. Just trace that outside. So it pops against that concrete. You could actually see it now. Alright, let me fix this. Okay. And now I could just go in and add a little bit of details. With that little bit of watered down black, I can go and make some of these shadows a little bit darker, like where my little ripple effect is going. kind of darken up some of those shadows in here. Maybe up here. And drag that down into the shadow. All right. Now, because this light is coming from an angle, I do need to add a little bit of shadow to my beach ball. So I'm going to take my chisel brush and very, very lightly load it up with some watered down black, super watered down. And I'm just going to give it a little bit of shadow right here. So while this is dry, even more water than that, I'm going to spread that out, adding in that shadow. And because I kind of lost a little detail, I'm going to go back with a little bit of black. Water that down. And just trace where that shadow touches that beach ball. Just so that you see a separation between the two. Just go and trace with that black, that bottom of the beach ball. Just add a little bit of water to it, smudge it around a little so it's not harsh, there's no harsh lines, just so it pops. Clean that up. All right. I think there's going to be a little bit of shadow up here. I'm just adding details, so I'm just going to add a little bit of black around the circle to show that it's separate. You don't have to do that. I just want to show it separate. All right. So I'm going to call it done, and this time I'm actually going to sign it over here on the left-hand side just because I think there's a little bit of extra space. Load up my little zero brush, and I'm going to give it my little initial. And that's that. If you guys want to go through and say, like I said earlier, I got a little bit of red, or messed up with the red right here. This is the time just to go in with your fine detail brush and fix any mistake you made or clean it up. It's up to you. Let's see. I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to go clean up anywhere where it should be red right now. All right. Now again, this wasn't a beginner's paint class. This was more of a regular paint class. A lot of focus and emphasizing on shadows and highlights. But let's go ahead and see what it looks like from a distance. All right. Well, I like it. I think also when you're taking a step back with those shadows and highlights, you really get to play around and see that it's going to pop and be more three-dimensional. And you're going to get better with time the more you practice. I really, really like how this painting came out. I think I want to emphasize, again, maybe another painting, underwater painting with those water ripple effects coming through, which just makes it look that much more realistic. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope you guys will join us again on Tuesday and Thursday nights. Tuesday night we do beginner, so it's a little bit easier. And Thursday nights we do stuff like this, a little bit more technical. So if you are familiar with painting, that would be a great night for you to join us. But again, you can go at your own pace. You can come back another time. This is all recorded, so just do it whenever you feel like you can. And remember, you're going to get better every single time you do it. So don't beat yourself up. This is all practice. Practice makes perfect. But if you guys want, you can go on my About Me page on my YouTube channel and find my Facebook and go ahead and submit any photos from any of the paintings you've done on here, because I would love to see them and love to comment on them. Subscribe if you guys would like to be notified on any upcoming classes. I will be posting them twice a week. Take care, you guys. Bye.